Hello
Welcome to our
everyone,
garden.
I hope you're having
It's
a
peaceful
peaceful
morning
day.
here.
Good morning.
Today's episode is
Look at the
simple on
shiny
purpose.
leaves.
Diep goes back to her garden and the daily routines that keep her grounded, while James returns to the office and carries the weight of meetings,
All right.
systems, and responsibility.
All right.
No
Let's move
big
forward.
drama,
Almost
just the
done. We
quiet
just need
push
one more
and
sticker.
pull of two people building a
Great
stable
job,
life.
sweetie.
Yes.
Morning
you got it.
checklists,
Now we can relax.
small boundaries, and the kind of calm teamwork that doesn't need to be loud to be strong. Stay with me until the end, because one small moment reminds them that peace isn't something you find once. It's something you choose every day. Hello, and welcome back. Can peace stay steady when one small buzz still has the power to tighten the whole day? Because the hotel message had promised private by default. The home kitchen greeted Ms. Diep with a softness she had missed. Yet one wrong note sat on the counter. James placed his phone beside the kettle and turned it face down, careful and quiet. Would the new partnership keep honoring boundaries once travel ended and routine returned? Before anyone else woke, Ms. Diep slipped into the garden and breathed in clean soil. Basil had grown stubborn and proud. The lime sapling stood straighter than she remembered. James stepped out with coffee and said nothing for a moment, as if silence could be shelter. The phone stayed face down behind them in the warm kitchen, but the same face-down phone followed James to the gate like a shadow that refused to leave. So he kept the morning simple on purpose. Breakfast, bags, shoes, keys in one place to keep the house calm. Because work could not be allowed to swallow the house again. He spoke like a man renewing a private contract. Office day, he said. Not heavy, not proud, just factual. James's mother watched Noah eat fruit with relief, grateful each time normal returned. At the gate, James knelt and turned boundaries into a ritual. If someone asks questions, no, Nye said. If someone takes a photo, move away. If you feel weird, tell Mom, Nye finished. And breathe. The phone stayed silent, but the rule stayed loud. Because that word breathe lingered in the hallway. Ms. Diep chose the garden instead of screens, yet the phone still mattered, because the circled label phrase from the conference room remained unresolved. That's why she built anchors the way she built boxes, one careful step at a time. She swept the front area, checked the cold unit temperature log, wiped shelves, and inspected fruit for bruises with hands that trusted checklists more than comfort. Nye trailed behind with the stuffed orange and asked, "Mom, can plants hear?" "They can feel gentle," Ms. Diep said, and Nye nodded like that settled science. When watering ended, Ms. Diep glanced toward the shelf where the phone waited like a question. But the same waiting phone traveled with James into fluorescent offices and meeting rooms. So the phone became a tool for boundaries, not a leash for pressure. Because someone suggested a founder story campaign to build trust, James ended it with one clean line. "Trust is delivered," he said, "not filmed." He pushed for audit readiness, standard templates, and training modules, and he asked IT to build a secure folder structure for weekly uploads so nothing could be accidentally shared. Then his phone flashed an email from the quality team. Revised label language for the US rollout. James did not open it yet. He set the phone down and finished the meeting first. Because that unopened email sat inside the phone all day, Ms. Diep felt it at home without seeing the screen. Yet she refused to feed fear with speed. That's why she turned compost slowly and let the clean smell of soil pull her back into her body. James called mid-morning, not frantic, practicing a new kind of check-in. "How's the garden?" He asked. "Green," she answered. "How's the office?" "Busy," he admitted, "but clean busy." When he mentioned another brand call request, Ms. Diep kept her voice steady. "Keep it boring," she said. James gave a small exhale, like relief. "Yes," he said. "Keep it boring." He held the phone in his hand while he said it, like a promise made measurable. But the same promise of safety stirred an older memory, the one that still tightened Ms. Diep's throat. So the phone stayed high on a shelf, away from children's hands and curious eyes. Because silence had once protected the girls, she had left without explaining, and the bruise of that choice still lived in the house. Anna came home and lined her care cards in a neat stack, whisper reading them like morning prayers. One card read, "Safe line, no crossing." James's mother held it and traced the letters, as if learning a new language. "She didn't have words like this when James was small," she whispered. Mrs. Diep did not answer with a speech. She just kept the phone out of reach. The phone stayed out of reach, but the past stayed close. Yet the same bruise eased a little when James came home before sunset with tired eyes and steady hands. That's why he washed first, kissed Noi's head, and asked Ms. Diep, "How was your day?" "Quiet," she said. "Loud," he replied, but the line held. He took out the phone and opened the email at the table where the children could not see. The attachment replaced chemical-free with tested and documented, and explained why factual language protects compliance. James exhaled, long and controlled. "Good catch," he said. Ms. Diep felt her shoulders drop. A small loop paid off, but not the bigger question. Would anyone try to use the family to sell the story? James set the phone face down again, not from fear, but from discipline, because that discipline held firm. Dinner tasted warmer and slower together. Yet one loop stayed alive, because the day Ms. Diep went silent still had edges. That's why she asked James quietly, "Who taught you a camera can be a threat?" James looked at the face-down phone, then at the garden door. "The day she left," he said. "Someone tried to buy access with just a small video." James's mother flinched, shame crossing her face. "Not again," James said, calm enough to be believed. He reached across the table and covered Miss Diep's hand. "Privacy is food safety," he added. "No shortcuts." James's mother nodded once, and the house felt safer because the truth had a name. The phone did not buzz, but the rule landed like a lock. But the same boundary line feeling followed them into the garden, where Basil brushed Ms. Diep's wrist like a reminder. So James kept the phone in his pocket and chose soil over screens. Because peace needed practice. Ms. Diep watered the lime sapling while James pinched a basil leaf gently. "This is the part I won't lose," he said. Then we keep coming back, she answered, and his shoulders finally dropped. Some families learn this slowly. Boundaries only hold when they're kept on ordinary days, not just crisis days. What boundary has protected your home the most, even when others called it too strict? The phone buzzed again, and James's face changed as he read, "On-site visit request. Tomorrow." But the same buzz on James's phone sat in his pocket like a pebble that wouldn't stop rubbing. So he stepped from the garden into the kitchen and laid the screen beside the basil jar, face up. Because the subject line read, "On-site visit request. Tomorrow." Ms. Diep felt the old tightness return, then forced her breath to slow. "Our rules first," James said. He washed his hands, then called procurement on speaker. "Names, ID numbers, written confirmation. No cameras, no lifestyle, pack house zones only." The coordinator agreed and emailed details while they listened. The first payoff came fast. The visit was legitimate, and the partner wrote, "Private by default." James slid the phone back into his pocket. "No surprises right now," he said. Now it's measurable. Yet the same relief carried a sting, because Ms. Diep remembered the day she went silent and left. That's why she watched James's face for old anger and saw none. Because fear needs allies, James asked Officer Thu to review the visitor list that evening. Officer Thu read the email like a file while Ms. Diep stirred soup, letting the pot's warmth steady her hands. "Legitimate visits can still be cover," she said. "So we control the flow." Shuka, James's mother, stood near the stitched cloth and whispered, "Will they try again?" James answered, "They try when they find gaps." Diep touched Anna's care card under the cloth. Safe line, no crossing, and felt the second loop tighten. Someone still wanted footage. Because that card stayed in her mind, morning came with pancakes and checklists instead of panic. But the same phone stayed in James's pocket, ready to confirm each step. That's why Ms. Diep turned the pack house into a calm corridor of proof. She wiped the ceiling table, checked the cold room gauge, and placed a visitor log beside the batch sheets. Outside, birds sounded ordinary, and she let that count as medicine. Luan marked staff-only lanes and posted the privacy notice at eye level. Nye stayed home with James's mother, tracing the stitched words for comfort. Anna carried stickers to the office corner and asked, "Do we say no again today?" "Whenever it protects you," Ms. Diep said. But the same visitor log became the day's center the moment a van turned into the yard. So James pointed to the log before he pointed to the fruit. Because respect is measurable, the auditor wrote a name, an ID, and a timestamp. He scanned batch codes and asked for lab results. James slid the folder forward. "Tested and documented." The auditor nodded. The operations lead glanced at the posted notice, then asked, too casual, "Do you ever capture family moments for brand trust?" Ms. Diep's stomach tightened. James stayed even. "No," he said. "Our home and children are not marketing." Officer Thu watched the man's eyes and the air stayed controlled. Yet the same phrase, "family moments," lit a warning in Ms. Diep's chest. Because it sounded like the old trap. That's why she asked one steady question. Because the past still needed a name, she said, Who asked you to bring that up? The lead blinked. No one, he said. But our inbox keeps getting messages pushing authentic footage. We assumed it was coordinated. James lifted his phone. Forward the thread, he said. The lead sent it. Officer Thu checked the sender domain. Spoofed, she said. At the doorway, James's mother arrived with Nye and went pale. That man, she whispered. He's back. Because that forwarded thread now lived inside James's phone, the phone became proof instead of dread. So Officer Thu called her cyber contact, while James kept the audit moving. Because work still had to finish, Ms. Diep returned to her checklist and breathed. She explained handoffs plainly, sorting discipline, seal code integrity, batch sheets that match boxes. She handed the auditor one sealed set and watched his hands check the corners, careful and clean. The auditor said, "Partnership ready," then signed the visit report and left. Officer Thu's call returned. Spoof routes through a local contractor already flagged, she said. Same plate as the unauthorized guy at your gate. Ms. Diep felt a small, fierce warmth. They were no longer guessing. But the same operator couldn't be met with emotion. He had to be met with structure. That's why Officer Thu waited until the visitors were gone and the report was signed. Because timing is part of justice. She walked to the road with James and Luan. The white van sat across the street again, lens aimed at the pack house sign. Officer Thu raised her hand. Stop recording! The man tried. Public road. James held up his phone with the spoofed thread and pointed to the posted notice. Private property, no filming. Officer Thu served a citation and read it aloud. Harassment, identity fraud attempt, prior trespass. The smile fell. He backed away, and the street felt quieter, as if the town itself had exhaled. Yet the same deeper loop still hung over Ms. Diep. Why target this family at all? So James's mother spoke, voice shaking, and the old silence loosened. Because truth can be protection, she said. James's father hired him years ago. Back when the family name opened doors, James's father used a media fixer to manage stories. When James walked away, the fixer lost access and hunted a new lever. The gate shop, the children, anything to force a return. James stood beside Miss Diep, steady. He gets nothing, James said. Officer Thu nodded. That connection strengthens intent, she replied. Ms. Diep finally felt the mystery settle into a clear shape. So the same house that held fear in the morning held ordinary quiet that night. Earned and defended. Because the case number sat saved in James's phone, he turned the screen face down without tension. That's why the family returned to a small routine detail, like sealing the ending with gentleness. James's mother reheated pancakes and set them on a plate, then placed the stitched cloth beside Anna's care card. Anna's care cards sat straight beneath the cloth. Nye watered the lime sapling and only wet her shoes a little, proud of learning. James checked the gate lock once, then left it alone.